You're listening to Copy Chief Radio. Get all the episodes and join the community at copychief.com.
Hey everybody, what's up? It's Kev, and we got a hot one today. My buddy Daniel Throssell is here with me, and I could have this guy on every week and look forward to it. So much we could cover. If you don't know, somehow you need to know Daniel Throssell is, I would say, just about pretty undisputed, the hottest email copywriter kind of walking the planet right now, as evidenced by the results he gets from his own product sales, how he dominates affiliate contests. But more than that, I want to tell you this, what I know from getting to know Daniel, because he has a really, I don't call it aggressive, a really very bold style of writing. And I wrote about this last week. It's such a hard thing to pull off. I call it the Vince McMahon approach to email copywriting. If you don't know, Vince McMahon started the WWE. It's that whole wrestling type showmanship of, it's amazing how my son used to watch wrestling and I'd go, this argument has been going on for 10 minutes and somehow I'm still watching. I'm still entertained. It's incredible. And it takes a lot of skill to do that. And you really notice that when the imitators try to do it and you're like, oof, this is really bad. This is falling flat. So what he does is not easy. And beyond that, I hope I'm not outing you, Daniel, but you care a lot about what you do and say. You put a lot of thought into the choices you make. And if you ruffle feathers, you know you're about to do it and there's reasons behind it. But man, beyond that, you've earned my respect as somebody who cares so much about what you promote and what you create. I know the time you put into everything you do. And I just want to tell you how much I respect that, man.
I'm floored. What can I say after an intro like that? Oh my goodness.
Well, yeah, man, it's true. And it's rare, sadly. A lot of people, as you know, come into this industry and they sell copywriting as if it's biz op. And they give people these false beliefs about what is possible, what should be possible. You and I both like to call that out and be really upfront about the fact that this is a career. This is a long game. How you conduct yourself is a major part of the equation. Having integrity, having character. If you're listening and you're a fan of Daniel's because you want to be like Daniel or, be a copywriter, please know there's a lot of character and a lot of caring that goes on behind what you read in those emails and see in those products. And if you've ever bought any of his courses, you can see that on display. Meticulous care. So with that out of the way, the reason I asked Daniel on this time, because this is our second episode together, he was recently kind enough to promote an offer of mine called Escape Velocity. It is a 10-week training program where we help copywriters basically launch their freelance business or relaunch it if they've had some bad starts. And Daniel killed it in the launch, sold a lot of seats to the training and went about it in a really interesting and unique way. And so we're going to sort of review what he did in this campaign to far outsell the other participants. And as, again, a side note, all respect to everybody who promoted for me. That for me, it was far less about how many sales they could get than the kind of people they were. I was really honored to have everybody promoting who did. But Daniel brought his typical flair and showmanship to it. So let's talk about some of the interesting challenges you had, Daniel, in promoting this. First of all was the time window, right? You had about 48 hours total to promote my offer before you needed to switch over to promoting your offer.
Right. Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I was, I'm not going to say raised, but I learned copywriting a lot from people like Ramit Sethi. This was back in 2015, 16. And the norm was these really, really long launch funnels. I remember at one point, one of Ramit's funnels was like 6 weeks long for one of his courses. And, the shortest they would do is 5 days. That was like one of the short ones. For years, people still do this. And I think we were just talking before you have a in the mix or something. So people, tend to do these really long launch windows. I guess with the view that the more time I'm selling to them, the more sales I'll make because the more chances I have to
Right.
sell to them. One thing I've been finding over the last few years is, and this part isn't a surprise to anyone who's done a launch. Most of the sales are coming when you open the cart from the people who are ready to buy and when you close the cart. And then in between, you have that awkward window where you are kind of grinding, you're sending emails out, and you're getting some sales. But, I started playing with pushing those dates together. So my first few launches, I maybe did them for 5 days long several years ago. And then I started trying 4 days and then 3 days. And I was like, even in these 3-day launches, I'm just getting sales on day 1 and sales on day 3 and not that much in the middle.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so one thing I've been having a lot of success with over the last 12 or even last 6 months is putting window in as tight as I can and going hard in that. And one thing that does for me is it takes the sale from this noise in the background of my prospect's life to an event that is very concentrated and stands out sharply. Well, as we saw this time, right, it worked really, really well. I got a lot of sales in those 2 days. And I found that, when I'm spreading it out, you can't go that hard. You cannot email someone 4 times a day for 2 weeks. You will, everyone except your mother is going to unsubscribe from the email list. This like just too much. Stop telling me about this. But if you shorten it down to 4, 3, 2 days, you can email a lot just in that time. And people are going to tolerate it because it's 1 day, 2 days where they look at their inbox and all they see is you. And that's kind of the thinking for me, is that the buying decision is something that they're going to force themselves to make around the deadline anyway. So I might as well try and focus all my attention around that. So that was a very deliberate strategy this time. I'm going to try push it to 2 days and I'm going to hit them hard during that time. One other thing, which I think is really important to mention when you're talking about that, is there are some people who'd be like, okay, I'll email them a lot. And so the email's like 9 hours left, get the deal. 7 hours left, get the deal. 5 hours left, get the deal. And it's just a lot of emails, but no reason to read the emails. And one thing that you'll probably have seen that I do is every single email I'm writing it fresh on the spot. I've never written that email before. It's not reused. And it's something worth reading. And that's the goal. And so if you are emailing someone that much, if you're going to do this, if you're going to try and compress that launch, you have to put a lot of effort into it. It's not like it's that much easier. You're still putting a lot of effort into making things that people want to read. But I want it so that on that day or that 2 days or that 3, when opens the inbox, they are going to see my thing. And I'm not going to be background noise. I'm going to be something they have to focus on and they have to make a decision because that deadline is coming up. They can't put it off. And then I'm done. I can get out there and I'll make my sales and I'm done. And that's been working really well for me.
Yeah, interesting. Question about what you said about making the emails valuable. It is hard to fight the instinct to not just make it all about urgency, right? We're always in the back of our minds thinking about attention spans. You have an incredibly engaged list. People freak out if you miss a day, which rarely happens, but right, they start going, I'm worried about you. Are you okay? Right? Not a lot of email. Yeah. And by the way, it's persuasivepage.com. If you're not on a Daniel's list, I meant to mention that up front. Persuasive Page. If I'm thrilled for you, if you're just about to discover what it's like to be part of Daniel's world, you please pay attention to everything that happens after you opt in to persuasivepage.com. But man, we'll talk about this maybe a little. You did put a timer in the subject lines, I think, for this one. Yeah. Which you usually don't do. But let's just start with the idea of giving yourself permission to write the thing you want to write without worrying about, am I going to lose sales because this is getting long and things like that.
You mean the email is getting long?
Just your philosophy behind that. Yeah. When you're selling, because you sell in every email. There's always a turn to a product. But again, when we're in launch mode or there's a strict time limit, it's really hard to fight the urge to not lead with that.
You are right that this time I did have times in the subject line, and that was an experiment more than anything. I was just testing because I don't do that normally. And I was like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. But normally the focus for me is I want to get to a point where on my email list, they can outsource the buying decision to me. And that's kind of a weird concept. And it's not like that simple, but that's the ultimate goal. I want someone, the ideal is someone on my email list who is my ideal prospect. They read an email and they don't need to read sales arguments. What they see is me saying, I reviewed this offer and I thought about it and I think it's a good fit for you. You should buy. And they say, cool, I'm going to buy it. And I have customers who will do that. And they tell me that. They say, I didn't even think about it. It's just you told me to buy it, so I bought it. That is the goal for me. It's transcending the idea of writing a persuasive sales email that convinces someone to buy. It's they're buying because it's like, oh, Daniel thought about it. He has my best interest at heart. And he said I should buy it. So I'm going to buy it. Okay. And with that in mind, it becomes a very different game that I'm playing. So those emails on that last day, they're not necessarily about making the perfect sales pitch. They are trying to make a sales pitch of sorts, but the main message that I'm trying to convey is, I think you should buy this. And that's drawing on a lot of trust capital that I've built up over time. And so that approach that you're talking about of, I write the emails to be interesting and valuable and make you want to read them, that is building up that trust over time. And I use that engaging content, as it were, to slip in persuasive messages over time and build up my credibility. And that's really what I'm drawing on when I do a campaign like this. You know, you could look at it in isolation and say, he used this argument, he used this argument. You know, at the high levels of copywriting, you should be using every tactic you can. So yeah, I'm trying to make a sales argument. But what I think really is going on here is that it doesn't matter what I'm saying to people. It's about getting their attention, saying there's this offer and saying, I believe it's a good idea for you. You'll notice, Kevin, that on the sales letter that I wrote, a lot of the lead was dedicated to telling the story of how, like, well, I checked out the course, I went through it, and I was really impressed. I also myself once tried to apply for coaching with Kevin, right? So that was
a big proof factor, yeah.
Right. And so it's more about the trust element there. And that's pervading the whole thing. So that when it comes to writing these emails, I don't need to worry so much about, oh my goodness, quick, get on this or you're going to regret it. In fact, the FOMO thing is, I don't want to overdo that, because if I get someone buying who regrets it, that kind of shoots me in the foot in terms of what I'm trying to do, the overall strategy. I want people in that program to say, as they have, I've had people email me and say, I'm very grateful that you sold Escape Velocity to me. They're emailing me and saying, like, this is fantastic. I'm very glad you told me to buy it. And that's the long-term goal. So what I do in the copy is almost sleight of hand on top, if you don't understand what's going on beneath the surface. Because yes, I wrote a great camp, written something else, and I could have just told irrelevant stories and said, by the way, Escape Velocity is ending tonight, and I really think you should join. And I probably would have had similar sales results.
Right. I love what you, and by the way, it's just for context for people, Daniel has a cool newsletter called Adventures in Copyland. And again, you can only buy any of Daniel's stuff by being on his list first, as you'll see when you join at persuasivepage.com, because again, I think this is in line with your integrity. I've asked you for links to promote and you're like, no, they got to just be on my list. I want them to understand sort of my rules of engagement and have full context about what they're buying, who I am before they do, which I love. But again, going back to this funnel. So in Adventures in Copyland, you talked about the difference between an email and a sales page and how they serve very different roles. And people might go, yeah, I kind of get that, but there's a really important nuance to this. So let's just think about this. Daniel is sending an email to his list. It's doing one job. He's then sending them to his landing page, which was a really cool looking Google Doc. But again, not a bunch of coding. It wasn't this thing he had to spend, because everything was kind of done quickly here. And then from there, they would go to my sales page. So you had the full context of okay, when they get to Kev's page, that's going to be more, it's going to be all about, they're going to learn all about the program and make their final decision there. I got to make it interesting and prove why I think this is a good idea for them in my sales page. And then, so let's talk about, I think you said in Adventures in Copyland, you're making an emotional sales argument in the email, and then you're making more of a tactical sales argument on your page.
It was, I think, more the idea of understanding the process they were going to go through. As you said, they were reading an email from me, and then they were going to read my sales letter, which basically, for context, for people who don't know, I offered a bonus stack as the reason to buy the offer from me. And then that linked to your sales page for Escape Velocity. So I think one of the big things I understood was that I had to recognize that each stage of that was doing something different. Right. So you were going to provide all the reasons someone needed to buy Escape Velocity. And so on my sales letter, what I did is I didn't even talk about Escape Velocity very much, other than to say, yes, good stuff, but you'll read more about it later. Read about my cool bonuses. And then because of that, because I knew that sales letter was going to be talking about my bonus stack, I then, in my emails, I did talk about Escape Velocity more. So there was this kind of different kinds of messaging that I was putting in different media, knowing that if they're clicking to a sales letter, that's going to tell a certain kind of story. And so I can make sales arguments, basically. Yeah. So I could allow my sales letter to do all this sexy wow stuff. Look at all these cool bonuses I'm going to get. And then in the emails, I could use that because that's what they're getting in their inbox in real time. That's popping up in, 24 hours to go, 12 hours to go, 8 hours to go. That's when I can play along with, respond to how much time is left. And so I do kind of send different messaging depending on how much time is left, so that with more time to go, it will be a more logical argument. So when I had, at the start, at 2 days, it was more about reasons that you should want this. And as we got towards the deadline, it was more emotional in a way, tapping into like, this is what you really want for yourself. You're sitting on the fence and you could have a career started in 10 weeks kind of messaging. That to me, you need the introspection that a deadline provides to get that messaging to resonate with people, because they're not thinking like that in the busyness of their day. Right. When you send them one email saying, hey, this course is open, there's a very, very few people who are going to, they're sitting there watching TV with their kids and they get your phone and they're like, oh, a coaching program. Oh, this is what I need, like coaching, that's it for me. And so those first really? Ones at the start, it's more, you'll notice that the first email I sent was like, this is big. I'm declaring war on Kevin Rogers. Right. That was, check it out here. It's like, it's just this fun, sexy, attention grabbing thing that's going to suck them in. And I know I've got 2 days to complete the job. So that's what gets them in. They're going to flick through. I understand how the buyer is going to do it. Like they're going to get that email. What war on Kevin? Click this. And then there's that sales page with the target on your head. It's like, I'm taking them out with all these cool bonuses. They're like, wow, this is really cool. And they'll flick through and they're going to be like, I'm not going to click through the sales page for Escape Velocity. I'll do that later. Like, I'm watching TV right now. Exactly. But that's planted the seed in their mind, right? And as the time goes on and I'm saying, hey, the deadline's coming up, they're like, I should really think about this. And it kind of grows in their mind. And then they're going to start reading through your sales page. And towards the end of the sale, they're going to be a lot more introspective. It's like, okay, wow, I really need to focus on this. It's now been working in their mind for 2 days. They've thought about it. So they've gotten over all these original logical thoughts and objections and whatever. Right. And now they're seriously thinking, should I do this? Is it worth it? What are the costs? Can I afford to spend the time on it? And so that's really changing the way they feel. And so the emails towards the end were tapping more into that. And I understand that towards the end, they're going to have read my sales letter, my first sales letter, and they're going to be more interested in yours, in reading the second one, the long one that's about the coaching. And so it's all about understanding how people are thinking throughout the sale and what part of the message is going to resonate with the most. And then the emails adjust to basically provide the right kind of push, whether it's sexy tactical or whether it's emotional appeal.
Love it. It's theater. It's great theater, but with purpose.
Ask any experienced freelancer and they'll tell you that getting started and landing those first few clients, it's the hardest part. If you're struggling to find consistent work, you want to build more confidence in your skills, or you're just starting out in your freelance journey, don't worry. That's exactly why I created Escape Velocity. It's my step-by-step coaching program for how to kickstart a freelance career, attract quality clients, and confidently deliver great work. Let me help you find and close good gigs so you can quickly launch and grow a successful and sustainable freelance writing business. Learn more at copychief.com/EV. copychief.com/EV. I'll see you there.
I want to read this. I'm going to read this whole deck to you. So, breaking news, a shocking announcement from Daniel Throssell, Australia's best scratched out, most warmongering copywriter. For the next 48 hours only, I'm declaring war on my former copywriting hero, Kevin Rogers. And then there's a picture of me in the scope, crosshairs of a scope, and it says, sorry, Papa Kev. Under that, by offering his own $1,497 copywriting program to his own buyers for a better deal than him. To join my side, read on. Now, so much going on there. It's like, to join my side, it's like, all right, you want to be part of this, right? This adventure, this war, this drama. And it's so in line with why people love being on your list and reading your emails and can't resist, because there's just always conflict. There's always tension. There's always something going on, and you do an amazing job of making theater out of that. It's very entertaining. But I know this wasn't your first idea for the hook. You originally were going to talk about just the value of your bonus and say, I've lost my mind, you know, that whole kind of thing. When did it flip, and when did this strike you to do this instead?
It's funny. I actually had that. I think the day before I launched it, this lead was going to be something like, you know, I've lost my mind. I'm giving away $3,000 worth of stuff. And that would have worked really well, right?
Yeah.
But then it just comes from, which you definitely have, right? You've read Carlton's Kick-Ass Copywriting Secrets, and his whole sales detective thing of knowing the offer, knowing the product, knowing the prospect in and out, and finding that hook. And this thought, as I was ruminating on it, came up to me. It's like, you know, why is Kevin okay with this, that I'm selling his offer, but I'm basically going to take a cut of it by throwing in all my stuff? And I was like, that's actually really interesting, because like you said, conflict is something that's really, really irresistible for people when it's played tastefully. You know, I've taken it to extremes, and then even diehard fans get like really, whoa. Yeah. But you know, I've just experienced the whole range of what works, and this level of conflict is just perfect, because it's all in good fun, obviously. Right. But when you have that element of conflict and tension, when there's something that actually makes me a little bit uncomfortable about an offer, I think, you know, that's actually going to get a really good emotional response. And so there was this idea that Kevin would probably, you know, he's giving away his own money to me, like, because he's promoted me to his list. He gives me credit. I have his readers on my email list. I'm selling his offer, and I'm going to take a cut of this. There's an element of conflict in that. And so you want to be training your copywriter mind. And this is what AI is not going to do for you, right? It's going to write words, but it's not going to look at the facts and say, hey, there's a kernel there of something that could be really interesting, this inherent drama and tension there. And so I took that element and blew it up. You know, what if other than try and sweep that under the rug and say, well, I hope Kevin doesn't notice it. What if I bring that to the forefront and say, in your face, Kevin? And there's this added drama because, you know, Kevin was this copywriting hero. I used to listen to his podcast when I was learning, when I was a rookie, and now I've come out and betrayed him. And there you have the elements of this great big idea. This whole, the upstart is declaring war on his mentor. And by making that into the big idea, it gets people laughing, it gets them smiling, and it makes them really want to know what's going on, because it also implies that there's a great offer at hand. Because if I'm going to be stealing your sales, there's going to be a really good offer to it. that's even better than just saying I have a great deal, because
Right.
it's almost the difference between showing and telling, right? That copywriting thing, show, don't tell. So telling is I've got a great deal for you, and showing or demonstrating is Kevin's going to be angry at me when I'm about to do to him with the great deal I have for you. And it adds that element of drama to it as well.
So good. Just listen, ingest that, everybody. Like that is, when we get into this game and we're like, oh, this stuff goes deep. Like what is persuasion really? There it is right there in kind of a nutshell. Think of the layers going on there. And this is, if you want to be a great copywriter, this is the kind of copy thinking, as David Deutsch calls it, that you have to develop. And there's a key thing in there that struck me that Daniel just said, makes him a little uncomfortable. I always felt the same way, right? When I was writing for clients, it's like, ooh, and John talks about this all the time. If they're comfortable with it, you haven't done your job. If they're not saying, I could never say this, we can't run this. He's like, when they said that, he's like, all right, we're on to something, right? Man, it's just because you think about it. Oh, I got a great deal. And you're like, okay, I'll check it out. Like, man. Now it's a kind of a logical argument, right? When you say I'm declaring war on this guy, and my goal is to outsell him on his own offer, you're thinking, wow, this has got to be good. I have to go see what's he come up with to defeat this giant here or whatever, and so much more interesting to go look. And it changes the frame because, like you said, it's not this like typical thing they see all the time of just imagine the value and you'd be crazy not to do this. It's more of like, come be part of this thing, which if you think about it, kind of leads them into where you want them in their head and emotionally, because you're inviting them or offering them to come be part of a thing with me for 10 weeks. Right. And that kind of leads us to, I want to touch on this. You had a brilliant email right towards the end where you took something I said that you and I were talking about in text. And by the way, if you become friends with Daniel and you're texting back and forth, you're going to end up saying a lot, don't share this, or don't put this in.
Do you know how many people do that? Chris, I was talking to Chris Osakowski the other day and he wrote something and we're having a chat. He goes, don't share that, by the way. And I was like, Justin Blackman says the same thing to me. He's like, don't publish this, but I was like, okay.
But you were saying this seems harder to sell because you had promoted Copy Chief and done really, really well with that. And when you said that to me, I was like, yeah, it is harder to sell because with any standalone product, they can buy it, feel good, and move on. They may or may not do anything with it, but they get that immediate dopamine drip. With a 10-week course, you're asking them if they're ready to really make a change in their life. Are they going to commit to this thing? Are they really ready? Because the price of those two things were the same. Actually, Copy Chief cost less than this 10-week live coaching. So it was more about what was required of them beyond money to want this offer. You took what I said to you, my exact response over text. I'm glad I was semi-conscious that you might do that and worded it like semi-intelligently. Next thing I know, I see it's in the email. I'm like, man, he didn't even ask. But I trust your instincts to know when something's okay. And so you ran with that and you were just really bold about it. And you said, this is true and this is not for everybody. And are you ready to commit? Because if you are, and you kind of future paced, this is what life's going to be like in 10 weeks. But if you do nothing with it and you're the kind of person who buys things and doesn't do anything with them, how's it ever going to change? And that was powerful. I don't know if you tracked each email sales, but I'm guessing that one was big.
Well, I was going to say I actually had people reply and say that was the one that got them in. Even someone who I think joined after my deadline, and so they didn't qualify for all my bonuses, they read that email and joined. And even when they hadn't qualified for that original offer, they still wanted to join Escape Velocity because of what was called out in that email. They actually said to me, I saw myself in that email and I realized something had to change. And that's what we were talking about just before, about modulating the tone of the emails to where you are in the funnel. Yeah. Because that kind of thing would not work very well. If you hit someone with that on day one You're either like, oh, Tim, your life could be in 10 weeks. Oh, I hear this all the time. They're not in the frame of mind to receive that message. But
Right.
doing it close to the deadline stands out and brings this to the deadline is the thing that makes an offer important to someone, because this is the moment you have to choose. So that is when you have enough investment from them emotionally to start playing with appeals like that. And I think a mistake that a lot of less experienced copywriters will make is they'll write the same email, but they'll send it at the wrong time when the prospect is not ready to receive that. And it's more than just about the copy. And this is another thing. If you want to know, like, well, how do I AI proof myself? The AI can't do that. The AI can't gauge how a human is feeling. And it can write the exact same email is going to work so differently in a 24-hour difference, with a 24-hour difference send time. 1 hour out from the deadline, it's like, I still have a whole day to decide. Whereas 3 hours out from the deadline, this is crunch time. I've got to really pay attention to this. And it makes them receptive. Your copy, but they change and the way they receive that email. So that email sent, when it was sent, it hit really, really well. And of course, I only featured that comment because it was so sanitized. I was like, it's going to sell the course. I'm doing it for Kevin.
I had no issue with that. I thought it was brilliant. Can I read part of the reply you got from somebody? Because I'm being considerate here because I'm in Adventures in Copyland, and this is a paid thing you shared and taught all about this launch. But so this is what it said. I need to tell you my whole emotional roller coaster ride of these last few days. I literally had panic attack when your offer ended at midnight Eastern, 11th of May. It's 11:59 a.m., 12th of May, my time, and my heart was racing because I wondered whether I should pull the trigger, because the email you sent, why you shouldn't join Escape Velocity, and damn, you made me want to join more. I couldn't breathe normally when I saw that one word in that email, commitment, and shite. That email literally called me out. I knew I'm that shameful person who bought courses and didn't complete them. And I get it's the lack of commitment that got me here. Wow. Incredible. And so it's just interesting because the whole approach to that is counterintuitive to how we would normally sell. Normally people go about it and say, I just want to placate and make you feel safe and remind you of all the value. And it's all logical stuff. This person is in this program. And by the way, the 2 live calls into the program right now as we record this. And it's an amazing group, dude. You know, we have the most people we've ever had. They're incredibly engaged. They're supporting each other. This is why running live cohorts like this, like, literally changes lives. You know, I have people from groups that I coached 3-4 years ago who still have weekly calls together, a few of them, right? Again, when you know that can be somebody's experience and you call them out emotionally, not in a nasty way, but in a way that makes them look at themselves and sit and go, man, he's talking about me, even though he doesn't know it. And then they have that reaction and it causes them to take the action that can make the change. That's the gift. And I think that's something you talk about a lot, Daniel, when you're not explaining why you go about things, but, you know, when you really get into some kind of hot water with something you're doing and you want to give people context, you'll flip it and say, do you understand I'm doing this for you? And for me, first of all, it's my business and I'm making this choice. Second of all, what good is it if you keep reading my stuff and we both know you're never going to do anything with it, right? I don't want that. I don't want that for you or to even waste my time, even though I only have to write the email once. What do I care if you get it or not? I think you do care that much. And then beyond that, there is issues like pirates and people there to steal your stuff and those nefarious things, right? But anyway, I'm going to let you talk because I could ramble about that. But I just think it's important.
Yeah, well, it comes down to, and this is taught as cliche by even some people who I feel don't practice it, but the idea of caring about who you're selling to. And I've heard people, and I'm not going to name any names, but I've heard people teaching that I don't even feel live it out because I've seen their marketing. Right. And they teach like, you've got to care about the customer, but then they will sell offers that are not going to help particular customers. And they want people to buy those offers that are not going to help them because it contributes to the sales tally. And it's a holistic approach. copywriting can't just be about what I put in the email. It has to be in the offer creation, in the offer delivery, and in the follow-up. And I will say that some of the people who emailed me saying they bought from Escape Velocity, I've been in there, I'm in Copy Chief, and you let me into the EV, and I've been looking, I see them participating and getting really into it. And, that makes me feel really good because that's why I'm doing it. Yeah. On the other hand, I will say there's a couple people who I know bought from me and I haven't seen them participating. And, I don't feel good about that. I'm not like, oh, well, at least I got the money. I think, I really wish that you guys were doing it. I didn't just want the money. I wanted you to be participating.
Right.
So, it's a holistic approach and it comes across. And Kevin, I think people can tell that. I think people know when you are being genuine versus when you are just trying to take their money. And you might get away with it for a short time, but when you're doing it like I'm showing up every day and I've shown up every day for the last 3 years, it's really hard to fake it. It's really hard to pretend that you care and say, I'm a nice guy, if your actions don't actually live with that. And I actually think that helps sell as well. It's not really a copywriting hack because it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
But it's very, very powerful.
I heard a great quote the other day that I'll butcher, but it was essentially, if you want to be known as a caring person, start with your family and the people close to you and build out from there. Because if you present yourself as a caring person, but in reality, with the people closest to you, you're not that word's going to get out. The jig will be up at some point. And I thought that was really brilliant. It's like, it's true that you just will not get away with it that long. People, especially these days, all we do is look at other people's lives on our phones and online, So someone sends you a photo. What do people do? They squeeze it and they start looking in the background. I was like, man, and dude, wash your windows, We're constantly evaluating other people's and so transparency, guess what? It's not a tool anymore. It's a reality. If you're out in the world, people see your stuff. So be authentic. Yeah, great stuff. Okay, what else did we want to? I have the hook we covered, the window, and opt-outs. Oh yeah, just real quick. You and I had a little conversation before we started. And a lot of people now do this thing where they give people that, hey, I'm about to promote something and it's really great, but if you don't want to hear about it, click here and I'll take you out of that sequence. And you said something to me that I've gone back and forth, and sometimes we do it. And then I started getting annoyed. I'm like, why are we doing this? Right. And you and I talked about it, and you said, I'll let you say it because it was your quote.
Well, I can't remember exactly what I said, but I think I said something like, yeah, with me, the whole list is the segment or something like that. Like they're all going to get the emails because if they want to watch how I do marketing, then they're going to see it all. They're not going to get to opt out of that. Otherwise, why are you on my list? If you're a copywriter, right. Why don't you want to watch me sell?
That's the thing I never quite understand. But by the nature of our market, it's like, you can choose to not care, but why would you at least not want to see? Like maybe down the road, you might be tasked with writing something similar. Wouldn't you want that on file? You're like, oh, that thing I ignored is exactly what somebody's asking me to write right now. But to opt out and say, I don't want to see any of it, I don't quite get that. It's a little too polite for me.
I think a very useful tip for copywriters to follow in this regard is that segmenting has its place. I'm not going to deny it. There are some times when you do need to target an email, but I think people overuse it generally because it can be a cop-out to writing something interesting. Because ultimately, humans generally have a large set of things in common that they find interesting. Okay. And one of the biggest ones, if someone's on your email list, is you. If you are running a personality-based email list around you are the common thing that they find interesting.
Yeah.
And so I like to challenge people to say, before you just segment, which really is an excuse to write an email that has nothing but what you're going to talk about. Like people will say, okay, I did a waitlist. Raise your hand if you want to hear about the Escape Velocity promo. Cool. And then all the emails they send are just, here's something else about Escape Velocity. Here's something else about Escape Velocity. It's like, well, I asked them to raise their hand, so that's what they want to hear about. Well, yeah, but that's kind of a cop-out because what I did with my list, I backed myself to say, I bet I can write in such a way. I know that escape velocity will appeal to 1% of the people on my email list.
Right.
But I back myself to write in a way that 95% of the list will care about the emails, even if they don't want the product. Okay, yeah, I'm going to get some people unsubscribing, but I want to be interesting enough. And that's harder to do because you can't take the easy way out and just write about the product. You have to come up with interesting things to say. But the advantage is, I was suddenly selling to a very large list. Whereas if you are relying on people to raise their hand, even people who are interested might miss the email, or they just like, well, I don't click links like that. I've done that with people. People send me emails like, if you want to stay on my list, click this link. And I would stay on the list, but I'm not clicking the link. Just maybe I'm in a contrary mood that day. I'm like, stuff you. I'm not clicking your link.
Yeah.
Well, whatever it is, or I'm lazy or whatever. There's no reason to put that particular barrier in my way. Yeah. And I'm not saying there's no time to ever do that, but I don't believe in general in segmenting out people from a sales pitch. I believe you should try and write the pitch in a way that is interesting to everyone. And I have people on my list, Kevin, who will say to me, like, I don't care what you sell. I'm not even a copywriter. I'm not in your market. I just follow along for what you say in the emails. And I just don't really care what you're selling at the end. And in one sense, it's like, well, they're less likely to buy, but there may be an offer eventually that they buy. But the whole point is, if someone totally uninterested in copywriting says that, how much more interesting must my emails be to the copywriters who they're interested in the offer and they get the interesting hook and lead and email as well. Exactly. So it's a different approach to writing the emails.
That's a really important thing. And I think I quoted this maybe last time we did a podcast talking about Ramit Sethi. He said something I never forgot. Somebody asked him about his emails being so long. And he's like, I tried writing shorter and everybody's always worried about attention spans. He's like, it just wasn't me. And I have to write like I communicate because that's who resonates with it when they read it. And so it is if someone's too impatient or can't stand that they're long, that's why you have an unsubscribe button. But it's easy to get hung up in wanting to. I just did it today, as a matter of fact. To be honest, man, I was like, okay, this is going to go out Friday. All I want them to do is go watch a replay of this training we did and then join a wait list. But talking to you, I'm sitting here going, that's a total cop-out, man. Make it interesting. Everything has to be sold. And you're showing character by putting the effort in. Like you said, it's not easy. It's not easy, even if it's only a 24-hour window. It is not the easy way out. Okay, this has been great. Anything else you want to add on this topic before we close out?
No, I think that's been really good. If we talk any longer, I'm going to get lynched by my subscribers for giving away all the goods.
Who paid to learn this? Yeah, I know. Okay, great stuff. Again, if you just have to be on Daniel's list. You're not in this industry if you're not watching what Daniel does. Persuasivepage.com. Next time we talk, I want to, you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to review some of the campaigns either you've done with Scott, because it'd be so fascinating for me to read some of your copy in a different voice. I only know you from your own stuff. And I know that, you call yourself Australia's best copywriter. It's not because you've been able to put on the show and provide so much value and sell so much to your own list. You've worked with clients who have broken records and done really equally innovative stuff in other markets. So when we do this again, I'd like to talk about how much of what you do here gets to translate over there. And other times you're like, I wish I could use this, but it's wrong for this, right? So that'd be really fascinating. Little teaser for the next one.
Very good. Well, I will say just very quickly that what I do to my list is kind of the optimal approach as I see it. And when I'm with clients, there are things that we take out because, they have a bigger audience or list or brand to worry about, and we can't necessarily do some things. So we kind of scale it down. But what I'm doing is basically the best that I've found of every kind of way, of every way to run the offer, of write the email, structure the timing. And we kind of deviate from optimal when I go for a client. But that's kind of what you said you wanted to mention it, even though I will not sell it to people who aren't on my list. But Campaign Conqueror, my course, is kind of about that. It's kind of like the ideal strategy. And then here's how we scale it down if your list doesn't tolerate that as well. Or if you can't do that, you don't have to do the drama, then do this instead. Oh, okay. So that's kind of the idea behind it.
Oh, yeah. We'll get that. Great stuff. So much. I guess I could talk to you every week. Thank you, Daniel. Really appreciate you doing this with me. And again, you revealed some proprietary stuff. But again, if you're not, highly recommend Adventures in Copyland. It's a steal to get inside the mind of somebody who you've seen demonstrated here in this short call is one of the great copy thinkers and executors of our time. Zero qualms or feel like that's zero hype behind that statement. I watch you every day. I'm always impressed. I learn from you. I'm just glad you're putting it out there and teaching it, man, because you don't have to.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate that.
All right, pal. We'll talk soon. Daniel Throssell, everybody. Let's hear it. Drive safe.
Thanks, Kevin.
Hey, don't forget your goodies. Head over to copychief.com/copychiefradio to get some great free stuff to help you put the things you hear on the show into action for your business. copychief.com/CCR.